Hello, everyone, and welcome to A Spooky Everyone's a Critic with Graveyard Matt. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Graveyard Matt, thank you for coming onto the show. Now, Graveyard Matt is a huge horror fan. He actually hosts a podcast called They Mostly Pod at Night. Mostly. Can you tell us more about the show, Matt?
Yeah, so what we do is we take about three or four movies, my co-host and I, three or four movies that are kind of similar in the themes and genre, obviously all horror, and then do like a in-depth review of the movies. We go a quick synopsis of the film. If it's an older film, who cares if it's spoiled? Especially with it being 40, 50 years plus. Newer films, we put spoilers ahead of it, but we kind of go and deep dive into what we like and what we don't like about the movies, kind of there are highlights and low points of each film. And when we do October films as well, we also do like one horror movie a day, which is way too many movies to watch at a time, but we do it anyway. And yeah, we are approaching 160 episodes of that, so we've reviewed nearly 700 movies so far.
Well, today's episode is actually about a movie that came out just last year. So do you want to give the spoiler warning you usually give?
Yeah, it's just spoilers ahead for Beetlejuice because some people haven't seen it, and we're okay with that. So spoilers ahead. Be warned. It's your last chance.
Okay. Now, Matt, before we go into this movie, I will say that as a kid, I was a huge Tim Burton fan.
Hmm.
Um, like many people have found his more recent output hit and miss. Uh, and it also seems like every decade or almost every decade there's a movie that's called his return to form. And then he makes another mad movie or another stinker, and people forget about the movie they called the quote unquote return to form.
Hmm.
When Frankenweenie came out, it was his return to form, followed by Big Eyes, another, oh look, he's making an adult drama. It's another return to form. But then he made Miss Peregrine, which kind of met out, and people forgot about those two movies.
Yep.
And then he made Dumbo, which not a lot of people liked.
No.
It's the one of two Tim Burton movies I've never seen, and I have no interest and probably will never see it. The other
Yeah.
being Planet of the Apes.
Oh, it's so bad, so good. Yeah, Planet of the Apes is I love the original Planet of the Apes. My buddy from childhood loves Planet of the Apes and has the TV show and DVD as well. But yeah, Tim Burton's Planet of the Apes was so bad, it's so good. It's just cheesy as all heck, and it's a bad movie, so I enjoy it.
Yeah. I do know I do know the change he decided to make to the twist ending.
Hmm.
I've seen that photo. And also just kind of a uh weird replacement, replacing Charlton Heston with Marky Mark of all people. I mean, look, sometimes Marky Mark's style can work for certain movies like Boogie Nights.
Hmm.
But like still that's like replacing Cary Grant with Keanu Reeves. It's like, sometimes his acting style can work, but it's just such an odd
Yeah, yeah,
placement.
yeah. I get that. For his ending and for his world building, Marky Mark seems okay-ish. It's not as bad as The Happening, so we gotta you know be happy with that.
Yeah, but Yeah, honestly, I will say that this, when it comes to, Planet of the Apes, I've seen the original. I have no time for the sequels from the 70s, which I've also heard are hit and miss.
Hmm.
Um, and I've seen the new quadrilogy. Uh, and from what I've heard, that's pretty much all you need to see.
Yeah, it's the quadrilogy is a good kind of lead up to where we get to in the first original Planet of the Apes. Yes, like the last Planet of the Apes, the original series is like a circular path and it gets us back to where we got to the beginning of it. But I mean, Tim Burton's like you have that twist ending. You can't repeat the same twist ending, 35 years later. It's just not going to work anymore because everyone knows the ending. So him going to a different planet and it being all eight planet is interesting, I think.
Yeah, but back to Burden,
Mm-hmm.
in general.
Yeah.
Um, Now, after Dumbo, uh, a movie that exhausted him actually so much, with the behind the scenes that he said he almost considered retiring while ma while making it. Like he was not happy working on that movie. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
uh, yeah, after, yeah, had you heard about that before?
Yeah. Yeah. It's almost like when he's playing in someone else's world that's not his, he doesn't necessarily care for it. And I get that. He's created some quite unique worlds that exist in movies and part of my childhood, my wife's childhood that we just enjoy and watch with our kids too. So, he likes to dabble in his own world. I think that's where he shines the best.
Yeah, though I would argue that only like two movies are like two, maybe three movies of his or for like his actual like his actual original ideas,
Mm-hmm.
which are Beetlejuice, which we're about to cover the sequel of, Edward Scissorhands. The Nightmare Before Christmas was based on a book, but I believe it was based on a book he wrote, and he also actually produced that movie. He didn't
Yeah.
he People think he's a director, but he's not.
Yeah.
Um
Henry Selick directed Nightmare Before Christmas.
yeah. Um let's see what else. Is Corpse Bride based off of anything?
No, that
Okay.
was all him too. Yeah, him returning. That was his return to form to stop motion animation.
Yeah, Corpse Bride, of course. And Frankenweenie and
Hmm.
it both the short and the remake.
Yeah.
But actually he's done a lot more adaptations and I think people realize it's really not just a recent thing for him.
Hmm.
I I mean,
Yeah.
of course there's Batman, which
I mean, arguably one of the best Batmans of the 80s and 90s.
yeah, Ed Wood was a biopic and I think that's actually my favorite of his movies as an adult.
Hmm.
Uh
Yeah. Yeah. Ed Wood. Yeah. I mean, Johnny Depp plays, I think, Ed Wood perfectly and captures the essence of Plan 9 from Outer Space and all the earlier Ed Wood stuff. And I think Ed Wood was kind of inspiration for Tim Burton to go into the world that he did.
yeah, because then he kind of followed it up with Mars Attacks, which is actually based off of a trading card game. Uh,
Hmm.
I think an obscure trading card game from the 60s, but it is kind of like him asking the question, what if Ed Wood had like a big budget to work with?
Right. Yeah. I mean, I personally love Mars Attacks. It's so chaotic and crazy, and I call it inspiration for the video game franchise. You know, Destroy All Humans.
Oh yeah, it's a fun movie, but then of course Sleepy Hollow's based off the Sleepy Hollow legend.
Yeah.
What else?
Yeah. And oh, I love Sleepy Hollow.
Oh yeah.
I think it was a big difference from the Disney Ichabod Crane story that they had, and he is actually writing a sequel as a novel and comic as well. They just announced it like a little bit ago.
Oh my God, I didn't know that until now.
Yeah.
and of course, I think and of course, I think actually, the first time he really adapted something, well, technically, the first time he adapted something that wasn't critically beloved at the time was Batman Returns, but that was more less the critics that disliked it and more the parents that disliked it.
Yes. Yep.
And, as the movie's gone on, it's gotten critically reappraised. So really, I think the first a lot of times he's been playing in other people's worlds, but had like more creative freedom
Hmm.
to kind of make it his own style. And that's sort of why something like Big Fish is well acclaimed because it's based off a novel, but it's also like it's not like a super popular novel.
Right. Yeah, and and Tim Burton's kind of big break was a Pee Wee movie,
Yeah.
already existing IP, but he kind of ran with it and made it just a cult classic because yes, it may be someone else's IP, but he does his own spin on it, makes it a little bit darker and stuff like that. Except for Alice in Wonderland, both of those. The first one was okay. Second one, Through Looking
Ugh,
Glass,
I hated the
was not
second
good.
one. I mean, he only produced that one as well.
Hmm.
But yeah, I think it is sort of like with stuff like Planet of the Apes, Alice in Wonderland, he feels kind of more on like a tight leash.
Yeah, I mean, at least when he did, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, it was closer to the novel than Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory was.
Yeah. Yeah, in ways, actually, I will say, I I did used to love that movie. I don't think it's really aged well in 20
No.
years. I think it's mainly I think it's kind of mainly like the second half, like where where you'd think it would be more magical, but it actually kind of becomes less somehow.
Hmm. Yeah, I always thought Tim Burton would have been a good person to adapt like the Glass Elevator, the second book in the series, which has even more fantastical outer space ish themes that he could have just made this a direct sequel to like how Return to Oz was sequel to Wizard of Oz despite being almost 70 or 60 years between them. you know
Yeah, and actually, and then actually after that, there's after Alice in Meh Land, he made Dark Sh he made Dark Shadows, which I remember not liking at all. And it's weird. It's based off of a soap opera that was popular at the time, but I had never even heard of it until the
Hmm.
movie came out.
Yeah, Dark Shadows. What my dad grew up watching Dark Shadows soap opera, the only soap opera he's ever watched, and they came out in DVD, and I got them for him, so I knew about it, and it was just an interesting take to see what that looked like, visiting it ish 50-ish years later, and I kind of watched it akin to like how the Addams Family and Addams and Values came out 35, 38 years after the original show, and it just seemed like a natural progression. I think lives in that world too.
Yeah, and I had the same actually response. I had the same response to Miss Peregrine.
Hmm.
Like apparently it's a popular book series. Until Tim Burton made a movie of it, I had never heard of it.
Yeah, it's. I'm trying to think if those exist in our house. My wife might have had them because it was They came out about the same time frame where all YA novels were being made into popular movies, and everyone was kind of just trying to jump onto that next big Harry Potter franchise. Is how I view Miss Peregrine.
Yeah, I've heard fans of the books felt there were a lot of inaccuracies. Again, I can't say for certain, though I
Hmm.
think that was kind of that one thing holding that movie back is it was sort of like just kind of another YA movie, but this time with goth kids.
Right.
And like it pretty much had all the tropes that all or most YA fantasy adventure movies have.
Hmm.
The skeleton fight scene was cool. I'll give it that. Uh,
Yeah, yeah.
but yeah, and I think that was actually that was kind of a movie. Wasn't that the movie that got overshadowed by controversy because when Tim Burton did an interview for that movie, people were like, "Why don't you have more black people in your movies?" And he says, "They don't fit my aesthetic" or something like that.
I don't recall that. I mean, it sounds feasible that he said that. I just don't recall it as what
16.
2008 is 2016. I thought it was
Yeah.
older than that. Wow.
Yeah. Although kind of funny you asked that question in a movie where Samuel L. Jackson plays the main character. Well, not the main,
Yeah,
but like one of the main characters.
yeah, yeah. I don't know. I don't dive typically into that world of the controversy just because if you dive into anyone's background, you'll find something you don't like.
Yeah. Um, but yeah, people have found him very hit and miss for a long time, and the misses unfortunately tend to linger in memory longer than the hits. Like during this discussion, we didn't even mention Sweeney Todd, which was fairly well received, though I know some people didn't love Depp and Bonham Carter's singing voices.
Well, I love Sweeney Todd. It's one of the few plays I've actually seen live, and I went to a minimalist version of it where it's literally a chair, a bucket full of red streamers, and that's it. That was the entire set design, and it came out in Chicago. It was in Chicago about the same time that the movie was out, and yeah, you don't have to like people singing voices, but they are destitute old England. They're not going to have good health. They're not going to have good lungs. It's just part of it. Worry about the plague and tuberculosis. And yeah, it's you know just because you can't sing well doesn't mean you can't be in the musical.
Yeah, I will say I thought it was a fairly solid film myself. I
Yeah.
do remember though thinking the trailer was a little unintentionally hilarious because out of context, they have Todd just standing in the middle of the town singing, "I'll have my vengeance,"
I will have vengeance. I will have salvation.
and nobody cares.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
like in context, you kind of forgive it, but like when you're seeing that out of context, it's like, why isn't anyone doing something about this lunatic?
Yeah, but like I said, it is the Victorian England, and people were so worried about themselves they didn't care about that stuff. You literally had people robbing graves to make money. You had Jack the Ripper. You had all that stuff that is just more of like, I'm gonna stick to my side of the street. Whatever that other person's doing, I don't care.
Yeah. Uh, but even though Burton almost retired and um he uh he didn't he created and he didn't create Wednesday. It's sort of a similar thing to Nightmare Before Christmas.
Mm-hmm.
It's he produced it and he directed a few episodes, but he's not but like the real creators are I think Alfred Goh and Mark Miller.
Mm-hmm.
It was actually I got to be honest, it was considered another return to form for Burton. But again, I just thought it was just a bunch of what it was the same YA story you've seen a million times before, just this time with the Addams family and some Burtonism slapped onto it. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and it's like with Peregrine, I can forgive the cliches because it's adapted from a book, but it is sort of like with Wednesday, it's technically its own story, so it's like, guys, can we not feel like we're just doing a checklist of Or we're not just doing, okay, now we're doing gonna do Harry Pottery. Now we're gonna do something Twilighty.
Yeah. Wednesdays is an interesting thing. My two young daughters absolutely love the show Wednesday, and we literally just watched last night. We finally showed them the original 1991 Addams Family movie, and you look at that and you watch it in Family's Value, you go, Tim Burton's got to be involved with this, right? And he wasn't, because it felt very Tim Burton esque, and the music sounded very Danny Elfman esque, and you would think that they would go hand in hand because they usually do. But him taking on Wednesday makes sense for him because that is that's the goth macabre world that he thrives in. So it makes sense for him to do it. But yeah, it is more geared towards YA more than anything else. Like, I don't have a strong desire to watch it, and I love the original Addams Family.
Yeah, yeah, and but that show's popularity kind of it reignited Burton's popularity with general audiences when
Mm-hmm.
people kind of got tired of his shtick a long time ago for the longest time. And the success of that show led to what we're going to talk about today, which is Beetlejuice, which a lot of people thought was a return to form for him. You thought it
Mm-hmm.
was a return to form for him. I thought it was okay when I first saw it in theaters. Like it less the more I think about it, though I'm not gonna act like it's complete 0 out of 10 dog shit, no redeeming qualities whatsoever. And honestly, any every episode, I'll admit there's like good points to a film I didn't like, or even flaws to a movie I did like.
Mm-hmm.
And I will at least admit one thing for a 73-year-old man. Michael Keaton has barely aged when he puts that makeup on. There's maybe a slight less amount of energy than back in 1988.
Boy, do you know how to pick 'em. Let me ask you something. Is this relationship really solid? Do I have a shot at her at all?
First of all, I want you two kids to know this is a safe space, okay? Feel free to express yourself. Don't be afraid. I sense there's an enabler here, but we'll get to that.
But not too noticeable.
Yeah, I think what you notice it with that slight lack of energy is because in the original Beetlejuice, he was not in it for very long, only like 8 to 11 minutes total. And this movie was more heavily Beetlejuice involved. So maybe he just didn't have the ability to do everything at that high speed pace that he had in the original movie because he had such small screen time. So he had to really, ham it up as the demon that is Beetlejuice. With this one, it has more of a story orientation with his character. We learned a lot more about him in the past, what he's currently doing, and his motivations for at least finally not wanting to marry a teenage girl.
Though that does kind of so I watched the first two back to back
Mm-hmm.
um to prepare for this. And it kind of and first off, it did kind of confirm why I really like the original, really find it to be a fun horror comedy, but this kind of fell flat for me, which is, well, not this isn't like the main thing, but one thing I find weird is that the sequel, and it's probably not, is that the sequel kind of implies that Beetlejuice is actually in love with Lydia,
Mm-hmm.
and like he's willing to stalk her, but in the original, he wasn't in love with her. He was just marrying her to get to the real world. He was a womanizer. He was trying to hit on every woman he meets. In the original, as soon as his plans are foiled, he's hitting on a woman in the lobby.
Yep, that's cut in half. Yeah.
Yeah, uh it's like why are you trying to turn his why like why would he be like, it seems like he would just be going, well, she didn't work out. Let me try to find another chick who can bring me to the real world. Uh, Instead, he's like stalking her from beyond the
Hmm.
grave, but like, why would he be interested in her? Just because she's the only one he knows can see ghosts?
I mean, yeah, you would, yeah. I'm glad, and I was concerned with the sequel that he was just go after, you know, Jenna Ortega the same way that he did with Lydia in the original. Like, oh, please, let's not do that again. But it makes sense, to go after Lydia because she's the only one that can really see ghosts and that can actually see him for who he is, and kind of views her as a challenge. Like, oh, she defeated me, right? I was able to be defeated. This couple 100-year-old demon was just blown away by this teenage girl, and he views it as he said he's a womanizer, but as a conquest at this point in time.
Yeah, you could see it that way, though. I will say it is kind of there's one good thing I'll admit, which is that uh every piece of Beetlejuice media, though admittedly it's not too many, have kind of turned Beetlejuice into a hero.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the first Beetlejuice movie to remember he was the bad guy.
Yeah, yeah, because yeah, in the '90s cartoon, he is a hero, and him and Lydia fight other evil things.
And in the musical, I heard they turn him into a good guy.
Yeah, it's I think we as a society we love villains. We also love anti-heroes. So that's kind of why he went down that path. We like, how many people are addressing it as Darth Vader versus Luke Skywalker? I'd say there's more Darth Vaders than Luke Skywalkers that still exist in today's costume world for kids. We love a good villain, and you want to root for the villain because he's Beetlejuice. He's crude, he's obnoxious, he's chaos, in demon form and ghost form. And yeah, I think him returning to a villain, but he did have heroic moments still in this movie. He still did things maybe not for the right reasons, just because it benefited him, but he still kind of gave up at the end of Beetlejuice. He let it happen.
Yeah, though that actually kind of goes to the downside, which is that pretty much the only reason he's a villain in this movie is because of his actions in the original, but like they don't but other than being just selfish and narcissistic and having no personal boundaries, they don't really have him do anything evil in this movie, yet still kind of try to frame him as the villain. Like the
Hmm.
most evil thing he does is stalk Lydia. And otherwise it's like the reason that they're con that you know, and this time actually Lydia agrees to marry him to help save her daughter, and the only reason they find that contract is null and void, even though I do not want them to end up together or see them get married, let me make that clear, is just because he brought living people to the underworld, which is apparently a crime now.
Which he wouldn't care about anyway. He's all for chaos and law breaking. Yeah, that's kind of goes into my downside. There's a couple downsides of this movie. One is the full song MacArthur Park was unnecessary, and unfortunately, what I think happened was there were one or two many side stories in this Beetlejuice movie. We didn't like, what purpose did his ex-wife
Mm-hmm.
have Dolores have? It had no purpose other than someone evil, more evil than him, right? Someone more evil than him killed him in his as a human to get his soul and become, the queen of the soul suckers. And it was kind of unnecessary. And honestly, the marriage between Lydia and her producer, not really necessary either. It felt kind of shoehorned in.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I think if we were able to cut one or two away, it would have made more sense.
Honestly, I actually found the MacArthur Park sequence to be fun and one of the highlights of this movie. But you touched on really my main problem, my real main problem with the
Hmm.
movie. Not that they try to convince you Beetlejuice is a villain, but forget to have him do much that's actually evil. Which is that it, Tim Burton had almost 40 years to pick an idea for a sequel.
Hmm.
He decided to use all of them except Beetlejuice Goes Hawaiian.
Yep.
There are a zillion subplots that have no room to breathe. Everything just feels extremely rushed through. The teenage boy that tricks Jenna Ortega's character into into the underworld. He's built up as a major villain, but then gets easily defeated. So does Morena Baccarin's character.
Hmm.
They bring the shrunken head people into the real world, and nothing comes of that. Um, and also, let's see. God, there's so many. There's so many stories in this movie. Can't even. Yeah, it's like it kind of goes into that problem I feel like a lot of sequels have, which is that the writers can't settle on a plot,
Hmm.
so they just do as many plots as they possibly can that they've wanted to do. It's basically the Amazing Spider-Man 2 of Tim Burton movies.
Yeah, I mean, I will. There's one storyline that should have been cut completely from the entire movie. I know it's most people's as well, and it's the Jeffrey Jones of it all.
Oh yeah, and there's him. I mean, I think they were kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place there because people would be asking, well, why can't they see him if they didn't
Hmm.
use his likeness at all? Um, so I do think that maybe and I do think at least it was clever that they just have that they use like that they had like a shark
Yeah.
having been off his head and a guy just stubbing him over, and I was thinking, oh God, please don't have Tim Burton have snuck Jeffrey Jones into the movie as a voice actor. I looked it up, thankfully he did not.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, there were I mean, there were like a couple too many shots of Jeffrey Jones's face.
Hmm.
Um, like the claymation scene would have been cool, but
Yeah.
it was a nifty visual, but they had to use his likeness. They couldn't even make him look a bit older. It's been 40
I
years.
know. Yeah, it's like I said I would have that storyline cut out. I think would have been better. What I personally would have liked to have seen is I would love to have seen Baldwin and Gina Davis back into this, and they couldn't get them. They couldn't find a way. They kind of it was a throwaway line of the movie, like, oh yeah, they moved completely on. They took the Soul Train to essentially the afterlife. I wish it was more so of her exploring her daughter's world and her daughter realizing that yes, she has it in the movie that her mom is telling the truth that she can see ghosts. And I don't want to say it necessarily a rehash, but like a continuation of that main story piece. But I think with the writers of this and Tim Burton, I kind of like my highlights for that is he was able to dabble back into this world. Is it a full on marathon win? No, there's some stumbles here and there, but honestly, I hope that then we're able to do a third Beetlejuice as he's planning and just go back to purely chaotic evil Beetlejuice. We can get away of the Lydia storyline at this point in time and have them do something else.
Yeah, actually, I think the problem, with the sort of several subplots approach and bringing back the Dietzes and Lydia and everyone is that by getting rid of well, is that, watching the first movie was a focused, shut story about about this lonely teenage girl,
Hmm.
uh, befriending these two ghosts who end up in many ways becoming more her real parents than her actual parents.
Right.
And like, yeah, there's like spooky, crazy, kooky madness in the movie, of course, but there's also kind of like heart to it.
Hmm.
And this movie is really just spooky, kooky, crazy madness, and that's fine. You don't have to have the emotional center that the first movie had, but also like that doesn't mean you can't stick to one plot.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Like I said, hopefully this is kind of a lessons learned to go with the third one and go back to the original because as you know, most horror movies that are trilogies, the third one is always about going back, right? That middle one is usually the software one's usually a hit or miss type situation. The third one's always return to form, as Jamie Kennedy has told us perfectly in Scream 3 over and over. That the third one is just back to the basics.
Yeah, and although I will say, like, because, there's also like almost 40 years in between the two movies, it does like I will admit one thing I really hate about sequels is when they try to keep hammering in references to the original and being like, hey, remember this thing, this thing, this thing, this thing, this thing. It did this. It didn't do it as much, but didn't do it too much, which I was thankful for.
Mm-hmm.
Though like they don't have Beetlejuice say it's showtime or have him turn into the carousel thing, which is appreciative.
Mm-hmm.
Like they still bring in the sandworms and like they easily defeat two of the bad guys through the sandworms. But one callback that doesn't really make sense with the producer is they have to have him dress up entirely like Otho, and I'm just thinking Lydia doesn't think it's a little weird that her boyfriend is dressed up like that asshole manager from 40 years ago that
Mm-hmm.
was using her stepmom.
Yeah. Yeah. It's yeah, going to the callbacks. Yeah, it is weird, and I'm not sure them seeing Deo at the funeral. Yes, it's a callback. I'm not sure that demonic possession dinner is something that those characters want to remember and have sung at their funeral.
Daylight come and we want to go.
That's one thing I will give the movie credit for. When I saw that slow ballad version of Deo in the trailer, I was gonna think, oh shit, it's a comedy that forgot it was a comedy.
Deo, me say Deo.
No, thankfully, the movie, for the most part, actually doesn't take itself seriously and remembers that Beetlejuice is supposed to be a comedy.
Yeah.
And admittedly, there are funny parts in this movie, especially again with Catherine O'Hara as Delia.
What? Why? No! No! No!
Serena, what's wrong? Oh, I'm trying to capture the perfect primal scream. I'm going to blow it up, mount it on the wall, and I invite all of you to do the same.
Who again was hilarious last time and is still hilarious here. Again, one side character that was useless among many, the cop played by Willem Dafoe, but I did kind of find him needing to use cue cards just to
Mm-hmm.
basic like cop like basic things cops have to memorize to
Yeah.
Through the sands of Titan if you have to. Men, this is what you've been training your entire deaths for.
Yeah. To me, William Defoe's character was a mix of the manager, the smoking lady in the afterlife waiting room, along with almost like the flattened guy that goes through those slots in the walls too. So he kind of like portrayed that character Phil, I think, in the sequel.
Yeah, actually, I will also give them credit. They don't have the caseworkers there, so that avoids the conflict of what to do with Juno, because unfortunately, of course, her actress died about 25 to 30 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
But, of course, like the character obviously wouldn't be dead.
Right. Unless they say that she moved on and took the soul train, you know.
Yeah, actually, even though I will say the movie had funny moments, you really burden you for making Soul Train actually like the show Soul Train.
This is the 835 to the great beyond.
You're better than a dad joke like that. Even the later era version of you. Come on, man.
Yeah, I mean that did feel kind of out of place there. That's very true. But he's just trying to, we explored a different part of the afterworld, and it's just interesting takes on it. Personally, would I've liked to see a little bit more horror in the horror comedy? Yes. I distinctly remember as a kid when, Gina Davis and Baldwin mutated their faces. It scared the crap out of me as a kid because it was so unexpected, and claymation. It was great, and I don't think we really had a moment like that in Beetlejuice.
Yeah, actually, I will say about that sequence, one time when I was in the West Village for Halloween,
Mm-hmm.
someone actually did that as their costume, and it looked almost exactly like the entire movie. And that kind of goes into something that's sort of sort of a mixed bag to bag here, which is the look of the movie, because the production design is great, but some of the effects and makeup feel like a bit of a actually feel like a bit of a downturn from
Mm-hmm.
a 40-year-old movie. Like, again, Beetlejuice looks almost entirely the same. Morena Baccarin's makeup is great, but then Defoe's brain looks so fake. It looks like something out of, well, an Ed Wood movie.
I was gonna say Power Rangers esque, but yes. A kid version of what a brain would look like on a dead person.
Yeah, and I know I'm now nitpicking by literally pointing to an extra, but there's a cat lady with fake cats. I know
Mm-hmm.
cats are hard to wrangle, but if anyone has the budget and time and money to have real cats for a quick second shot, it should be Warner Brothers and Tim Burton.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I think something we got in the trailer that I was hoping was going to turn into like that face moment was at the church when people are getting sucked into their cell phones, and that was, it looked good. I think to me, remind me of that the stop motion that he would have done in the original with their faces getting like contorted and sucked into the phones. But yes, there was some CGI reliance in this movie that, I prefer practical effects. I think Tim Burton does best practical effects.
Yeah, actually, he's one of like the top filmmakers who I don't think has quite translated well to CGI. There is something kind of uncanny about his visual style in CGI.
Mm-hmm.
Both Charlie and the Chocolate Factory and Alice in Wonderland are good examples of that. And Yeah, here it is kind of the same thing. Like when they do use CGI, it just does not look great, especially
Right.
compared to like the Beetlejuice snake from the original.
I wish, and I think we're starting to see somewhat of a change of some people going more into practical. Love it or hate it, Terrifier series showed that you can do practical still and have it look great. And I would like people to embrace that, and that's what I'd like to see from the third Beetlejuice is more back to that practical, that stop motion, charm that is Tim Burton.
Yeah, and that actually, you know, goes yeah, I guess honestly the eyes coming out of the head looking cheap in the trailer was kind of a bad omen for what the effect would look like in the actual film. But again, the underworld set itself does look great. Although one thing I did, notice while rewatching the original after watching the new movie is that we don't actually spend as much time in the underworld as you probably would remember. It's really only like a couple of scenes.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and this movie does spend a lot more time in the underworld.
Yeah, that's very true. We said, yeah, we definitely, yeah, we had more time, we had a lot of time in the model, at least a little bit in the original. We only got a brief hint to the model in that one scene. It's I don't know if it's suffering from that comedy sequel where they took the funniest parts and just instead of being a 30-second gag made it into a couple-minute gag, and that's why that the expansion of those gags from the originals maybe what weakened it.
Yeah, though I will say that the rules set up by the original are kind of like some of them at least are kind of ignored in the sequel. Like in the original, Adam and Barbara, when they die, they just go back to their house. They don't even know they're dead at first.
Mm-hmm.
And like they have a rule book that tells them what to do. The movie remembers that you have to make a chalk door to go to the underworld, at least with the bad guy. But when everyone else dies in this movie, they go straight to the underworld.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like maybe you could have argued that maybe that P that what Adam and Barbara went through only works if you die in an accident, but everyone in this movie dies in accidents.
Yeah, I would, and given the writers a benefit of the doubt, and here's the argument you can make, say why it might be that way. It's Halloween. The veil is thinnest at that point in time. So maybe on Halloween, the rules are a little bit different.
But the beginning, when Delia's assistant dies, and of course beforehand when Charles dies, that's before Halloween.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. But I mean, how long was he dead, do you think, before they realized that his plane crashed and he was eaten by sharks? I mean, I don't think it'd be that long because of what I believe it was it a year that they were dead and came back? They didn't realize it in the first one.
Yeah, it was yeah, they did set up that like time is kind of elusive and
Mm-hmm.
something that takes place like 3 months actually takes a like something that takes like 3 hours is actually like 3 months. But I guess the thing is like Charles' death is being taken from the perspective of the living.
Mm-hmm.
So they would probably know a lot sooner that he had died than he might.
That's true. Yeah, I don't know. That's a good observation. Is that as you said, it just takes some time. But yeah, they're immediately going there. So I don't know. As I said, maybe there's some sort of rule because they know Beetlejuice and deal with him. Who knows?
Yeah, actually, the book isn't mentioned at all in the sequel, even though it was like an important part in the first one.
The handbook.
Yeah. Did they
Uh,
yeah.
the teenage kid had it. That's what he read out of.
Oh my, you're right.
Yeah.
Okay, that I had forgotten about, but it didn't seem like everyone had it. While in the original, it seemed like it was something you had to have.
Yeah. What
He died?
kind of yeah. And kind of talking about that book though, you wouldn't think there'd be a loophole to get back to the living in the handbook for the dead.
Yeah.
Or everyone would be doing that.
Yeah. That that is a good point. In fact, why didn't Adam and Barbara look for a loophole in that book in the original?
Yeah. Yeah, because I know that they said there was a loophole that they found for them to move on, which in this movie sets up there's a soul train, so that's not really a loophole. That's just a station to heaven or hell.
Yeah. I yeah, I do not know. Actually, that is another thing that, where the world building of the original and the sequel is kind of confusing is that like in the original it seemed like like ghosts who haunted the earth haunted places that were like just tied to places they lived at.
Mm-hmm.
And this one it seems like Lydia can just see ghosts willy-nilly, but then some ghosts just seem to live in the underworld. Like, it wasn't really clear always how that seemed to work.
Yeah, it's weird because I always envisioned that the underworld is the afterlife, but now they made the underworld seem like purgatory as a middle ground for determining where you go, heaven or hell, and that's why the teenage boy was sent to hell. There's just a switch, and he was deemed to be bad enough. But what loopholes can there be? Beetlejuice clearly a demon. Well, if he's demon, he came from hell, but he lives in the underworld. But wants to come back to the living, who knows? He's able to like throw visions of himself into the real world, which was iffy to begin with in the first one.
Yeah, I'm not gonna act like the first one always made sense, but this, and maybe because the plot was a lot messier, it
Mm-hmm.
was sort of like what was nonsense, what like it really sort of upped the nonsensicalness, while like in the original, because it has at the end of the day still a pretty straightforward plot, you're just sort of like, okay, that makes sense for this world.
Yeah, yeah, and maybe yeah, you're right. They just threw too much and too fast and loose with the rules of the underworld in this one.
Yeah. Now I will say that one thing I remember like a reading, which I thought was kind of an odd criticism, was that people thought Winona Ryder acted too much like Joyce Byers and Catherine O'Hara acted too much like Moira Rose. I get the Joyce Byers thing. She was kind of at times acting like Joyce Byers in a goth outfit, but then like people were saying, but the Moira Rose complaint, I'm thinking, when's the last time you've seen the original? Because Delia is pretty much Moira Rose.
Well, yeah, her Schitt's Creek, her character was based on her stuff from Beetlejuice. Yes, absolutely. So she just went back to. I think, you know, the mom was spot on the same across both movies. She was that artist that she's now 30 some odd years older. Yeah, I agree that her, like I said, her character from Schitt's Creek is her from Beetlejuice.
Yeah. Although I will say this, like for the longest time I thought it was crazy that she was only in her early 30s. Um, but now as an adult I'm like, oh wait, I can see it. She doesn't look that much older than I do now.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I think when you're a kid, like everyone who's over the age of 30 looks old to you or middle-aged.
Yeah, that's very true. Yeah.
Yeah, but now, but I guess maybe Home Alone is sort of what I'm thinking. Wait, she was only in her 30s? But
Yeah.
I think it's also just the fashion she was wearing in Home Alone, while in Beetlejuice she's wearing more artistic outfits, so she reads younger. Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
I remember seeing an episode of the Larry Sanders Show she was on.
Hmm.
It's like, oh, she looks younger than in that episode than she did in Home Alone, and that episode actually came out only like 2 years actually after Home Alone.
Yeah, the 90s aged everyone. Everyone looked a lot older than what they were in the 90s.
Yeah, and again, it's like fashion, hairstyle,
Hmm.
and just age or de-age you quickly.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, I except for Beetlejuice, who even being played by a 73-year-old man still looks almost entirely the same.
Yeah, I think yeah, other than a little bit more wrinkles around the eyes when he smiles and squints, that's about it.
Yeah, well, and actually, speaking of that, Gina Davis said that she and Alec Baldwin weren't asked to return because they looked older, but it's like they both look pretty good for 60 somethings.
Yeah.
Honestly, though, you know, even though I'll have to get into another unfortunate controversy with another actor from Beetlejuice, with, how Alec Baldwin shot someone on set. I think that
Hmm.
might be the real reason he wasn't asked to return, and you can't really have Adam without Barbara or vice versa. So I think that's really why they weren't asked to return, and the age thing was just an excuse.
Hmm. Yeah, I know. Unfortunately, Gene Davis has been very vocal for, for in Hollywood for a number of phone calls and roles and stuff like that, which is a shame. It really is. She was just in Knock Knock that came out last year, and she was fantastic in it.
Yeah, she was also great in Blink Twice, uh, the Channing Tatum,
Yeah, yeah.
Zoe Kravitz movie, and again, like I would have not have guessed she was 68 in that movie at all.
No, no.
Uh,
And that's the movie I meant. I messed up on the name, but yes, that's what I was talking about. Yeah, yeah, yeah. She was fantastic in that. And like I said, I just I wish she didn't feel that way. I wish Hollywood wasn't that way when women got over a certain age. They don't want to cast them as much because I think she would have been fantastic in this movie.
yeah. And I guess they were just like, oh, we already have Catherine O'Hara for our over 60 demographic, so, and she's in Schitt's Creek, and you aren't in anything as big as Schitt's Creek, so sorry, Gina, you're going.
Yeah,
And your husband's played by a guy who's been excommunicated by Hollywood.
yeah.
So bye, Stuart Little's mom and Boss Baby.
Very true.
Yeah, you're both going to the afterlife.
Yep, never to be seen again. Who
Yeah,
knows?
actually, and that honestly, that's also another thing about further Beetlejuice media. Besides the musical, Adam and Barbara are pretty much like non-persona grata in further Beetlejuice media. They turned Beetlejuice, a lot of it has turned Beetlejuice into the hero and made and basically the two leads, they just don't exist anymore
Hmm.
or moved on.
Yep. Well, yes. Who knows? Maybe with number three, everything will be right and they'll all come back. Who knows? Never know.
Yeah, well, I think that's a good place to end it. Thanks again, Matt, for coming on.
Yes, thank you.
And what are you doing now? Like, have anything cool to promote?
Yeah, we are recording our 160th episode of the podcast tomorrow night, and it's going to be all about the Hear No Evil original remake, and then we're doing the Killing of Sacred Deer. And yeah, I also have Conversations in the Void, which is my interview show that I do on Wednesdays at 9 p.m. Central. We are booked until 2026 at this point in time in that show. So we just passed 100 episodes of that. And we are currently also writing short films and independent horror movies as well, my co-host and I. So we have more works in the progress.
That's great. Well, thanks again, Matt, for coming
Thank you.
on. And happy Halloween, of course, everyone. And next time for Everyone's a Critic, I might do something that is somehow related to a movie that came out in November, but it may not be quite in the way you think. You'll see how. We'll see you then.